Welcome to Off the Shelf, Conversations with Authors. I'm Martha Kofod, and our author today is Jill Rigby. Jill, thank you for joining us.
Sure.
Tell us a little bit about your background. I know that you're an occupational therapist.
I've been working with children for about 26 years, mostly learning disabled kids. I worked in public school, in a private clinic, and I've done home care. And I currently work in a school for learning disabled kids, primarily all learning disabled. That's the prerequisite for the school to get in.
Okay. And the book that you've written it has a very catchy title. Would you tell us about that?
It's called I Put It Right There, I Swear. And it's a phrase I hear a lot, and I say a lot, not exclusive to children, but that's, and I think everybody's had experience with that feeling. I put it right there, I swear. I don't know where it is, but some people have it more than others.
Or you leave a room to get something,
right, and you forget.
And you forget what you
Right.
left for and have to go back.
Right.
There are devices that we all use. Is that the focus of the book?
Yes, it's the focus is on executive functioning and what it although the moving parts that are involved with executive functioning. And like I said, we all have those issues from time to time, but the kids I work with, and lots of people, grown-ups too, have those issues more than other times, and it creates frustration and low self-esteem, and yeah, I mean, it's tough, and it's hard to understand because you don't want it to be there, and it is.
Right. You have to overcome it or compensate. It's about a 10-year-old boy. It's fictional.
Yes.
Is it based on any particular child or several children?
It is. It's based on several children I work with throughout the years, not any one. And I also have 2 of my own children and 3 stepchildren, and so it's based on them too.
So normal children as well
Yes.
as so-called learning disabled children.
Yes, absolutely.
Can you give us some specific examples of what you mean by executive functioning?
Yeah, it's executive functioning is basically, and again, I'm not an expert, but it's basically the process that you go through to attain a goal. And so lots of things are involved in executive functioning, like initiating, organizing, sequencing, planning, remembering memory, like working memory, so remembering a lot of things while you remember other things and are doing things, and then regulating your emotions and being able to adapt to change or decisions that you have to make without becoming frustrated. So transitioning and shifting as well. And I guess you can explain it as if you would like to plan a trip or you're planning a dinner party. Lots of things are involved, and if you impulsively say, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna invite 50 people," without really planning or imagining what that might be like, you can get yourself into some trouble. And so, that happens every day, I think.
So working with the children individually, do you use this book, or do parents use your book in any specific ways? A how-to book.
It's a how-to book. It begins as a story, and then the character, Cameron, goes through some testing, some testing by a psychologist, and they determine that he struggles with executive functioning issues, and then the psychologist and the teacher work with the parents to come up with some strategies, and so that's how the story ends. And there's a list of strategies at the end of the book. Well, throughout the story, the end of the story, that can be implemented. So yes, parents use it. Yes.
Jill, at what point in your educational pursuit did you decide to be an occupational therapist?
I knew I wanted to work with people. I didn't know I wanted to work with kids. And I really liked anatomy and physiology. I really liked moving. I was originally going to be an exercise physiologist, and so that's the direction I took for a while, and I was thinking about sports psychology. And at some point in college, about my sophomore year, I decided that I needed to work more closely with people and not just not just doing research, or I wasn't sure. So I checked into, I knew a couple of occupational therapists, and it was a very creative, sort of open field that you can take a lot of different directions, and that's why I did that. And so I pursued that. I went. Like I said, my passion was is to help children realize that they're great, no matter what. And so I was involved in what I wanted to do is work as an occupational therapist in a psychiatric facility, and I did that. But I only could do that part-time because there was only a part-time position available where I worked, and then I worked part-time as a pediatric therapist because I needed to fill some hours, and I fell in love with the kids, and the rest is history. I never left.
Yes. You've mentioned your frustration that there isn't a handbook of this sort.
Right.
And so how did you go about
writing it?
Initiating, yes.
Yeah, exactly, initiating. I looked, there are handbooks, but they're very technical. They're hard for me to understand, and I study this. So there's nothing you can turn to that is welcoming or inviting for parents, because they're in it and they see it every day, and you need a something, and so I looked around and I saw things that were very technical, and I wanted to recommend some books to parents, and everything I would recommend, they would need time to study it. And so I go to lots of parent-teacher conferences throughout the years, and I started writing down some of the questions the parents ask, and then I'd go home and write down answers, and it turned into sort of an anecdotal episode, and that's how I started. That's how I started writing it. Again, it was my frustration with trying to explain to people what it meant, or what you can do. It's complicated, but the solutions aren't so complicated. They don't have to be so complicated. Sometimes they do, but they don't always have to be. You can see some quick results if you implement some pretty simple strategies. So,
having conducted these parent-teacher interviews on an individual basis with parents that were struggling with their children, and the notes that you took, at what point did you decide that you had enough material here to pull it together and go ahead?
I think I kept a journal for about 2 years of questions, and I have to tell you, they were similar questions. I mean, it was the same recurring. They were the same recurring questions, and I would go home and write the answers, and I think in pictures. So I would write in pictures. I would sort of paint a picture as if I were talking to the parent, and it became, like I said, it became a story. So it was about 2 years, and then last summer I just said, I'm just going to put it into a book.
So did you have a writing atmosphere? Did you closet yourself to do this?
Well, I'm lucky enough to work in a school, and we work 9 months out of the year, and then I can choose how much or how little I want to work in the summer. And I often do work a little bit, but I have most of the summer to do it, so I thought that was a good time. And I like my home, so and there's often I often have some time alone, or will create some time alone, and that's what I did in my room on my bed, and with
your
my
filing system on your bed.
Exactly.
Right. I recognize that.
Exactly.
So then, when you determined that you were going to publish it, how did you go about that?
I asked some of my friends, a couple of my friends, I don't have a whole lot, who are in the publishing business. They aren't publishers, but they worked for publishing companies. And I asked about how to go about doing this, because I'm not a writer, I'm an occupational therapist. And they sort of steered me in the direction of self-publishing, because it was such a specific target audience. So I didn't even pursue traditional publishing. I just went right towards self-publishing and looked around. I interviewed a lot of companies, about 5, and I came up with one who seemed like they would work with me on the writing process, because I'm a new writer, and marketing, and and online, and the regular, in bookstores, and
Sure.
Just pounding the pavement, and they have.
So you have a rough draft that you give to these publishers, or,
Yeah.
or is it in fairly completed layout format for them?
It's a rough draft, and they sort of go over it, and they'll edit it a little bit for you. Then they send it back, and you review, and you have to edit it, and sometimes find your own editor. They also provide illustrators, but I have my own little illustrator.
I remember reading that in the newspaper article.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
My daughter, my younger daughter, who's 17, Mary Kate, she's not an artist, but I think she's very talented. She's very creative. She has come to work with me periodically throughout the years. She really gets the kids. She also, has some offshoots of executive functioning struggles, as I do, and she really understands them. And I asked her to help me illustrate it, and she was excited. And again, in the summer, she worked on it, and I think really captured the frustration and the facial expressions of this
The
boy.
illustrations I haven't seen the books, so are they full figure illustrations,
Yeah.
or just facial?
They're full figure. Yeah, they're full figure.
Oh, then she must be an artist.
I think she's great. I do. She won't admit it, but
That may be a career for her,
Maybe.
or a 2nd career. So have you thought about doing any further writing?
Yeah, people have asked for the teachers at my school really like it, and they've read them to the students, and they said a couple of them wanted a sequel. But as an occupational therapist, I deal with a whole bunch of different sorts of issues, and and I think of focusing on on other different aspects of LDs. That is specific to occupational therapy as well. That's hard to understand, because so much of it is so abstract. It's not a tangible something you can put your hands on and take a pill for, or fix.
Right.
Right.
We had made some reference to it being a how-to book.
Yeah.
But it's more of a book that a child or parents can identify with.
Mm-hmm. Yes, exactly. Like you asked about the publishing process. The reason why I did the self-publishing is because I wasn't sure. I actually looked around for more self-help children's publishers, and I didn't see any. Since then, I've found a couple, but it is more of a self-help children's book, which there's not a whole lot. I don't think there's a whole lot out there.
Well, again, is this a book that children would read?
Yeah, I think it's a book that children and parents could read together. It's a little. It's about 30. I think between 26 and 30 pages. I can't quite remember. So it's not very long. It's not real wordy, but I don't know that a child would sit down by himself and read through it unless the parent was reading with them. It's not, Froggy Goes to School. It's not. It's not sort of a fairy tale.
Cameron has problems
Right,
that he overcomes.
exactly.
Okay. you've obviously read a lot. And has any of your reading contributed to your ability to write? You don't describe yourself as a writer, but in fact you are a writer.
Yes, I mean, I think I would be mistaken if I didn't say yes. My reading, I go to continuing education courses, and I think, but mostly my experience has contributed to that. But definitely what I read. And
could you refer to any special books that you remember reading, maybe as a child?
Gosh, you know, I was thinking more as like I said, I have memory issues. So
we all do.
But yeah, as a child, you know, well, I don't know if I can recall any books as a child that I've read, except for I have to tell you that my passion, I think, working in schools and working with kids who have obstacles to overcome, as we all do, but for some reason, learning disabled kids feel like they're really, really different, and they aren't like everybody else, and so they enter school, or they sometimes don't enter it, but they spend a lot of their school day trying to feel good about themselves. And so I spent a lot of my kids' early childhood days reading them books like I Like Me.
Your own children.
My own children.
Yes.
Yeah. I Like Me, or you know, just things that would show them that they could be different and still great.
Establishing good self-esteem.
Right.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
So I think, yeah.
But that's the teacher's, that's because you're in this field, that's
Right.
your job and parents' job.
Right.
To convince these children that they aren't, that's not their prime identity as being different.
Exactly.
It's-
Exactly.
we all have little differences.
Exactly. And as a parent, when you keep hearing that Joey isn't doing what he's supposed to be doing, or Joey's misbehaving, or whatever it is, all, you know, for 8 years or however long, or 9 years or more, which is horrible, they start to believe it. And so I think parents need to hear that that they have a great kid, and they're not doing this on purpose, and that there's a real reason, and that there's some things you can do to help that you probably already are doing, but they don't even know that they're doing it. So I think,
Focus on their successes.
right, and right. They hear it too often, and they live it. They're in it, as we all know as parents. I mean, LD or no LD, that you get frustrated with your kid and you can't see the little milestones that they make because they didn't clean their room, which you told them to 5 minutes ago. And so that's what you focus on. But it's good to hear that they can. So.
Do you ever have a child that you can direct to write their own story?
Yes, and yeah, I think absolutely every day. The definition of LD is, you know, having average or above average intelligence, and these kids are so smart, and many of them are so articulate and can tell you how it is. And so I guess, you know, previously you asked me, you know, if something about the writing process, and though that is, as a matter of fact, I mean, the kids helped me articulate what it is that they are frustrated about. So yes, they do. We often sort of help them write their own, you know, version of what it must be like, or what it's like, or what if.
It's self-expression, but they also have to need direction.
Right. Oh yeah.
And that's what teachers and parents do as well.
Right. Yeah. Definitely.
And when you worked with your daughter on this book, you mentioned that your interaction was significant.
Mm-hmm. It really was. I think anybody who has teenagers, a teenage girl who is really any teenage girl is, you know, trying to find their way, I think, or boy too. And I asked her, and and I could have asked other people, as in the self-publishing route, they had options they had illustrators that you could opt for, and I chose my daughter because for a couple of reasons. I thought that she really got the aspect of, like I said, the children, and I really wanted to work with her because I think it's important that, I mean, how many teenagers have the opportunity to illustrate a book that was published and go through that process from beginning to end? And I remember myself as a teenager, and I didn't really know how to attain a goal. I wanted it, but I didn't really know how to go through those steps. And it's, there's several steps that you have to follow and redo, and then kind of take a breath and revisit and recheck, and then move along. And sometimes it was frustrating, and sometimes it was really fun. And then you have this end product that you both worked on together, which was, I think, really brought us closer. And
did Mary Kate make suggestions for the content of the book?
She did. I tend to get wordy, so she suggested that I make it more concise. Certain parts that the kids really didn't need to know this. She often tells me kind of how to say it so that kids would hear it, and that was very, very helpful. She did that in the book and in real life.
As children do.
Yeah, right.
I understand.
Right.
Would you have any suggestions for authors for self-publishing, for people that don't know where to turn?
Yeah, I think it's important to interview different publishing companies. I think you have to kind of make a list of what is important to you, because you can spend a lot of money and you don't really have to. I think you kind of have to make a list of what the important things are for you, and where you want to start. For me, it was a little easier because it was such a target audience, and I work in the community where I could make it happen. I can sort of distribute and get the book out there. But so I think those are some of the things that you need to think of. The marketing piece, and what you're doing this for, who you want to see this book, and make sure you not only get the information in writing, but really speak to. There's consultants that your very own sort of team that you work with, and I think it's important that you are prepared with questions, and you ask and you ask and you ask, because after a while they get busy and they're moving on to the next person. So I think it's.
But you have to have an almost completed product before you go to your publisher.
You do, yeah, almost completed, absolutely, you do.
Well, this has been a wonderful interview. Thank you, Jill, for joining us.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us on Off the Shelf. I'm Martha Kofood.